Hello.
Hello. Hi. How's it
Hi.
going?
Okay, yeah. I'm going to wait a couple of minutes to see if anyone else comes on. What I was going to say is a couple of people from the Women Who Climb Facebook group
hmm
messaged me and said that they can't make the live, but they want to watch it. So if it's all right with you, I'm going to put a record. Well, last time I did this, I lost the recording, but I've got so many backups this time. But if it's all right with you, I'll put a recording on YouTube
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
so then I can send it to people who couldn't come.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Perfect. Cool. We've
Is
got a couple
my
of
is my image showing only because it looks grayed out to me? But if you
yeah,
can see it, that's
no,
all good.
I can see you. Cool. There's a few people joining, so I'll just hold on a second and then we can get started.
Awesome.
This bit's always really awkward.
At least technology's working so far.
I know. I've got a screen record on. I've got like the backup on this because my Instagram live with Anna who teaches yoga last time I lost, well, the app crashed when I tried to save it and then lost the video, so paranoid now. Okay, there's a couple people on, so do you want to just get started?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Perfect. I can kind of start off by just, if people are joining this, they probably know what Uplifted is, but we're very new, so I'll do a little intro and then I'll pass over to you. Um, So for anyone that doesn't know, Uplifted is a new charity. We're based in Glasgow and we offer or provide access to strength training facilities and yoga facilities, kind of fitness stuff, with a focus on strength training for survivors of gender-based violence. So it works on a referral basis from other organisations and we kind of work with coaches and support workers to provide that environment. So that's like what we do. We're very new, but yeah, that's where we're at. So do you want to give a little intro into who you are and what you do?
Yeah, certainly. So my name's Hetty Key, and sort of 9 to 5. I absolutely love data. My work is a combination of research and events. So research through the Women's Trad Fest, through Women in Adventure, which is an independent research company looking at everything from mental well-being through to participation, through to sustainability, and then taking that data and putting it into action. I also organise events such as Women's Trad Festival, which is a climbing festival based in the Peak District. Although we're called Women's, we welcome any age, any ability, any gender, and we want to empower people into getting into trad climbing. And other events include One Run Global, which is happened last December, on the 10th of December. We united people from every single country in the entire world in an hour of running. And yeah, that was really exciting.
That's so cool.
It's quite varied. And I guess when I'm not doing that, I'm outside.
Yeah, yeah, I get that. From even just from your Instagram and stuff, and then listening to the things you're involved with, it's clear that you very much enjoy being outdoors.
Oh, definitely. I can't say I'm particularly good at any sport in particular, but I like giving them all a good go.
I think that's the best way to be.
Yeah.
I was going to ask then, how did you get into kind of climbing and outdoorsy type adventure stuff? Is that something you've always been involved in?
So I definitely, growing up, we'd always been outdoors, spent a lot of time, lucky enough to be like walking in the Peak District and just spending time outside. I also did a lot of horse riding, but then it was kind of probably after university. I was in a position where I was in Sheffield, a city that I absolutely loved, and I had a great time at university. But most of my friends had left to go, most of them towards London or other places, and I was kind of left in a city I knew really well, without many people I knew very well. And I remembered I'd loved the outdoors growing up, and I kind of thought, oh, I'd quite like to get into climbing and biking and go and enjoy the Peak District more. And so I just essentially went down to the local climbing wall and just kept turning up until I gradually got to know people and, you know, could transition to going outside. And then when it came to things like the biking, I borrowed my dad's old mountain bike, which I think was like, or at least 20 years old. Like, definitely it got a lot of laughs when people bumped into me. They were a little bit like, what are you riding? And I think the best way to describe it, I just completely winged it. Like, I definitely, you know, I'd love sport, but I didn't really know what I was doing. I just kind of falling down hills until I'd figured it out.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, so it's quite interesting hearing you talk about you just kind of went and turned up to your local climbing wall just to see what it was like.
Yeah, I was lucky enough that they had it. They had sessions for beginners and also improver sessions. And yeah, I think at the time it was quite intimidating just going somewhere and doing something by myself. Not really knowing the sport. I think it's different when you know what you're doing. But everyone was really welcoming and I enjoyed it. And I think once you start, you know, getting into these things and you just enjoy them so much that you want to go back. So yeah, it took a while though. It definitely, especially that transition to outdoors. It took quite a long time of building up my confidence and getting to know people and working out the sport really.
Yeah, yeah, I was going to ask you that. So, roughly how long was it from when you started climbing like indoors before you decided to try outdoor climbing?
I think it was definitely a year. I can't quite remember which is maybe bad, but it was definitely a year plus before I, you know, properly was regularly climbing outdoors. I think it was always something I wanted to do. Like my motivation for going to the wall was very much to climb outdoors. That was my aim. Um, and when it comes to outdoors, I'm a scenic climber. I like a good view. I'm not necessarily about pushing myself super hard on the rock, but mainly because trad for me is a lot about the head game and um, really pushing your personal limits from a mental perspective as well as a physical.
Yeah. That's really cool. I think it's interesting when you hear people's different reasons for getting involved in climbing or different reasons for going to a climbing gym. Whereas like people that kind of enjoy the outdoors maybe anyway, go with a view for it to be like a stepping stone almost, or a
Mm.
way to try and like train and introduce yourself with the idea of climbing outside. And then there's some people that just kind of go and try it and don't even think about going outside now, which I feel, yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, I think we see that a huge amount with Women's Trad Festival. We welcome so many new climbers, and that might be new to the rock. It might be new to climbing entirely. It might be the first time they put on climbing shoes. And everyone has a different reason maybe for getting there. But actually, that feeling at the end of the day when you've had a really good day out, I think that's fairly universal.
Yeah. I was going to ask, so when it comes to maybe start with like the women in adventure thing, because there's so many things that like you're involved in that I'm like, I want to ask you
I
everything.
wear a few hats.
So we'll start with women in adventure. So do you want to give a little bit of information or background about what women in adventure is and kind of like what led you to start it up? And we can maybe talk a bit about the data that you've collected from that as well.
So, the aim of Women in Adventure is to provide a collective voice. I believe that if we're going to base change in the outdoor industry or kind of beyond that, that it should be based on real data, as opposed to, say, opinion or, you know, gut feeling, which although very valid, I'm a scientist at heart and I was very interested in trying to put some data behind everything from participation through to inspiration. And initially that essentially started as a hobby. And for many years I was kind of running this alongside traditional employment and my work. And it grew and it grew. And I think it was the mental well-being survey that particularly changed things for me in terms of refocusing that I wanted this to be kind of my full-time job. I think, you know, as with most research, you come out with just as many questions as you go in with. They're just different. And I learned that I was never going to reach a point with this project at the point in time where I was ready to just kind of put it to one side and continue. There was always more I wanted to know, and I was just so passionate about finding that out. That back in 2019, this became my full-time job.
Yeah, that's so cool. So kind of what kind of data have you been collecting, and what has like had the biggest impact? So you mentioned there the kind of mental well-being survey. Do you want to tell us a bit about like the kind of stuff that you're collecting and what it's telling you?
Yes, absolutely. I think this is the area I find like one of the areas I find most fascinating. So I was looking at the impact adventure sports have. So essentially, by that being active outdoors, has on your mental well-being. And I was looking at that specifically for women in the outdoors. So within that, probably the top like headline stat was that 99.6% of women agreed that the outdoors help their mental well-being, which I think is no surprise.
Yeah.
But what I was actually looking at beyond that was, say, taking the different sports and looking at maybe how different sports benefit well-being. So, for example, well-being can be broken down into different aspects, so such as like your anxiety, your happiness, how worthwhile you think things are, how satisfied you are with your life. And for example, if we take swimmers, generally swimmers seem to have a really strong mental well-being, maybe compared to climbers. And it's a case, the thing is, when you're looking them together, it's a case of better and best, as opposed to anyone having, the outside not helping anyone. And I just got fascinated in how the sports were different, and you can even take it down to, say, those individual measures that I just talked about. So surfers have, low anxiety and high happiness, and they're kind of above average on that scale. But then when you look at worthwhile and life satisfaction, they were slightly lower. So there were all these trends emerging, and actually when you compare that to maybe some of the nature of the sport and the lifestyles within it, it was all starting to piece together and make sense. And I just found that fascinating.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting. I think it's not a surprise at all, is it, that the majority of people, pretty much everybody, was like that outdoors has a good kind of positive impact on mental health, well-being in general. So when you were talking there about kind of anxiety and things like that, were there themes coming through with like the kind of impact on mental health of like outdoor activities and different types of outdoor sports and stuff?
Absolutely. In terms of the impact on the lives of women, both, I kind of categorize it like internally and externally. So externally is things, where you live, what you choose your job to be, everything was affected. The women in my survey, they didn't just write a few words, they literally wrote pages, which was brilliant. And then internally, probably the biggest thing that came through was this sense of belonging that the outdoors gave you. And I think it was linked to feeling connected and part of something bigger than yourself, and having a real sense of purpose. And that was a theme that definitely came throughout all the results.
Yeah. And I think that that's something that's like, although I guess like obviously looking at the kind of outdoor sports and outdoor activities and stuff, it's something, the mental well-being and the kind of almost like belonging to a community or belonging to kind of a group, that and the kind of support that comes with that is an element that is quite a crossover between that and the kind of thing that we're wanting to do at Uplifted with having the group training environment, and that kind of peer support. It has a big impact on mental health, I think, a lot of the time.
Yeah, and motivation as well. There's a huge amount to show that motivation comes from when you kind of, you understand what you're doing, you believe in what you're doing, you're in an environment where you feel supported, and actually by creating a community like yours where you're bringing people together in that way, it's really empowering, and it not only helps our well-being, but it encourages us to keep participating, keep going.
Yeah. And with the data you were collecting, so I'm quite interested in some of that. So I don't know, to put you on the spot, but you said you love that part of it. So, but you were saying that some of the different types of outdoor activities or sports, there was kind of like a contrast in the data you were collecting on the different parts of well-being that they impacted. Um, what was the kind of what was the difference between things like kind of like you mentioned swimming, you mentioned like rock climbing and kind of biking, things like that. Were there any kind of differences in like the research that you were doing, the data you were getting that surprised you?
Um, I think possibly there was quite a difference between land and water based, which I found really interesting, and I can't, I'm afraid I can't give you a reason for that yet. But I was surprised that there was a difference, and that's maybe because I love, personally, you try not to bring any sort of personal bias into this, but I I would say I love all the things I do equally. So I was surprised about the difference itself. Um, and I didn't maybe expect it to align so strongly to maybe some of the stereotypes of sport.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so I've noticed like there's quite a lot of I don't know if it's that I'm more aware of it or there's a kind of a trend just now, like growing trend of like outdoor swimming and wild swimming and stuff. But was there a correlation between that, like with kind of when you were saying water-based stuff there, like so like outdoor swimming and things like that, with that having a kind of positive impact on people's well-being? Oh, I can't hear you. Hold on a second. Oh, okay. Try again.
Oh, no?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Good. You've gone quite quiet, but hopefully you can hear me.
Yeah.
So swimmers felt talked a lot about their image and their identity and how the things like the sport they were doing had maybe changed their mindset from like, I can't, I don't, I don't like this bit, to actually really feeling in love and empowered by their body, which was very, very kind of cool to read about.
Yeah. That's really cool. That's really awesome. When the climbing, with the kind of outdoor climbing in general, what was there a feeling around or like any data around the mental health benefits of climbing?
I think in our
Oh, I've lost sound again. I don't know if it's just me though, or whether everyone's like can hear it.
now. I can exit and rejoin.
No, no, can hear you again.
That's so strange. Um, so within the festival, we see such a I don't want to use the word transformation, but people really come alive over the course of the weekend. And for example, 50% of people said they felt they were more capable after the festival than they previously thought, which I think it's amazing. But I also think everyone needs to believe in themselves and and I kind of simultaneously like that statistic, but would like it to be lower in a way. I think believing in yourself and having that confidence is really important.
Yeah. And so that leads nicely onto so we've talked a bit about like women in adventure and the kind of data you've been collecting about the impact on women and whether that be like all aspects, and you described it as like internal and external. So you're also a director involved in the Women's Trad Festival. So do you want to, for people who don't know what that is, do you want to give us a little bit of kind of background or information about that?
Yes, so track climbing, for anyone who doesn't know, is traditional climbing. And this is where you go up the rock, you're kind of the first person to climb up it, and you climb with metal climbing gear, and you place it in the rock to protect you. And this is like temporarily put in to make you safe. You get to the top, it doesn't kind of damage or change or alter the rock in any way. You're using the natural shape to sort of fit things in around as you go up. And you climb, you make yourself safe, and then your partner climbs up behind you and takes out anything you've put in. I end up doing like the hand actions while I'm doing this. And the one of the really lovely things that I like about this is you leave your environment entirely as you found it, and it just feels like a very natural way of climbing. And And Women's Trad Festival, as I said before, welcomes any age, any ability, and any gender. And we want to empower and encourage people to trad climb. And that's about taking people from that step, maybe from inside to outside. Also empowering those that are on their journey with qualifications and are looking to learn to teach or instruct climbing. And then also create this network of individuals and create a real community around that. And
Yeah.
We're also based on 3 fundamental core values, and these are like integral to everything we do. And that is sustainability, mental well-being, and accessibility. And that factors into everything from how we sell the tickets to the way we orchestrate the weekend to how we recycle our rubbish. And they're kind of fundamental to everything.
Yeah. And when it comes to accessibility, for example, then it's something that, we're like kind of aware of with the things that we're doing. And what kind of steps have you taken to like address maybe any barriers with that kind of accessibility of like trad climbing, or even just like accessing the kind of work that you're doing?
Well, first things first, we made the ticket system, or make this ticket system a ballot, because we thought, what if you've got kids you're looking after? What if you're at work? What if your internet's slow? We try and think of the barriers to every step of being able to come. And then when it comes to the festival, you can turn up with, a tent and high psych, and we'll try and make sure the rest is there. So you can borrow shoes, you can borrow climbing equipment. You do not need to turn up with all the kind of climbing gear. We know that can be really quite expensive and not something that as a total beginner you can invest in straight away. So we try and provide all that and give people a learning opportunity that doesn't need an incredibly long kit list. There are some essentials we can't get around, but we try our best to really look at every single step. Whether it's offering a parent and child ticket, or also putting on additional courses to teach our leaders how to teach those with disabilities. We really try and do everything we can within our kind of ecosystem.
Yeah, that's really great. And like, is that just something that you guys were kind of, everyone involved in it was just something that was like a focus for you, or did it come from somewhere, the idea that you really wanted to make it as accessible as possible for people?
So, we're the 4 main organisers, and we sat down quite some while back, and we wrote down all the things we cared about and things that we really fundamentally wanted to bring to the festival and make sure we were offering everyone. And we all had the same top 3 and these were these 3, and it was an amazing discussion where we just they all linked up, and that really naturally came to be the core of what we wanted to do. So it was kind of a thought-led discussion, but there was something nice overlap that we all had about the same 3.
Oh, I think I lost your sound again. I did hear everything, but it just like tailed off at the end. Yeah.
That would be great.
Oh no, it cuts back. It cuts in and out. It could just be me, to be fair. Hopefully other people can hear, but you do come back in. It just cuts out a little bit. Yeah, so it's really nice to hear. It's almost like all of you kind of had the same core values, even just with coming straight forward, straight into that kind of discussion.
Yeah, I think so. It was really nice to create the space to think about that. And I really love that it affects everything we do. I mean, when it comes to my main role is kind of site logistics and that kind of side of things. So when we have sustainability, and that was probably, top of the list for Charlie and Ellie. And, originally we were looking at, they said, oh, let's do a zero waste festival. Let's make it completely zero waste. And that, from a site perspective, was a real challenge, but because it's stuff we care about, we wanted to show that this is possible. So we take the approach that less plastic would be fantastic. And our 2019 festival, including setup, we only had 5 bin bags of waste over the whole weekend. So it's amazing. It's not always the easy route, but it's really rewarding, and we like to we hope that by showing everyone maybe over the course of a weekend it can be done, that can go beyond, and we can try and take that into daily life.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's really interesting. Like if people can see it happening, it kind of makes it feel like it's like you can kind of change little elements in your life to be more sustainable in that way. So when the festival's on, how long is it on for?
So people arrive Friday night, and they leave on the Sunday evening.
That's
I
really
think
cool.
there are requests for it to be longer, but we also want to make sure that this is accessible from a work point of view. If you're taking time off work, or or traveling, that we're not taking a full week of your time, although that has been requested by some.
Taking that as a positive anyway. That's the best review you could get. So yeah, like what was behind you starting this, you and the other people involved?
So the Travelers was first started by Ellie and Charlie. They were climbing at the Women's International meet, and I think they were at Wenzhorn, which is, for those people that don't know, it's or they were at Gogarth, which is a sea cliff in North Wales. It's absolutely beautiful. And they were climbing, and I think they felt really empowered by the fact that there's this whole kind of crag full of women, which trad festival has definitely trad climbing has definitely improved over the years. However, it's still predominantly quite a male focused sport, and so I think that back then that environment just inspired them to want to create that for those learning to climb. So they kind of came back from that and started the festival, and then it was later on that they approached me because I'd worked with them through RAB right from the beginning, supporting the festival. They said, "Oh, we're looking for another organizer." At this stage, Gilly had also joined, and that's how I got involved. And I remember thinking, I definitely haven't got capacity or time, but I really want to do this. And I think they said, "Please," and I very, very quickly went, "Oh, yes, absolutely."
And what do you think about that idea of like kind of like representation in sport and stuff, and how you mentioned there, like you think that trad climbing's getting more like maybe becoming more inclusive or a bit more diverse with the kind of people involved, but have you found that traditionally it was quite male dominated?
I think it's tricky to say from a personal perspective. I'm lucky I've always definitely say is role models are really important. Whatever um, aspect you're coming from with climbing, what we want to do with the festival is increase the number of visible role models out there and increase the number of climbers that you can look to and think, yeah, they're like me. I'm going to climb. Because especially medium representation, that's if you've not experienced the sport, that's your reality of it. That's how you perceive it, and that's what you're going to think it's like. So
Yeah.
unless we all work as a community to increase the number of visible role models and increase the diversity of role models, then we're not helping encourage people who might not previously thought they'd love track climbing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's that it kind of it goes into all aspects, but like if you don't ever see anyone that looks anything like you doing something, then you might not ever think it's for you. Or some people might see something like tri climbing and think that it's not for them because they don't see anyone like them, maybe like high profile or on social media or being kind of written about or whatever. So it's a really nice kind of thing to hear, that you're like you're passionate about kind of changing that or encouraging there to be more people, more role models to look to.
Obviously couldn't have the festival in 2020, but we launched a series called Climbers Like Me because we just wanted to kind of give space to we've got an amazing community and they're all incredible climbers. We just wanted to give a space to let people share their climbing story, and I'm so inspired by like everything that people have come forward with and they shared. It just makes just makes me really excited for when we're allowed out a little more and can kind of head back to the rock.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what kind of things you've been able to do since obviously the pandemic, but not being able to do things as much in person and stuff. So I had seen a bit about what you've been doing online, but yeah, what kind of stuff have you been doing with the Women's Trad Festival?
So at the minute we're just say too much on that front. We're obviously just reading all the guidance possible and all the information that's out there. And then on a personal note, I've been just trying to find new and different ways to explore locally, and whether that's kind of setting myself silly little challenges on my bike or getting up early and going for a swim. It's just trying to fit in what's feasible. I'm so lucky that I live in a green space, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. So that's definitely made my lockdown experience a lot nicer.
Yeah. And so kind of, I'm flipping between a little bit because it's interesting. With the research you were doing with with Women in Adventure, with the data and stuff that you're collecting with that, have you found a way to then like kind of almost like act on it or actively put it into practice in a way that you feel has been really kind of seen a lot of change or affected change in that way?
So we events I organise. And then I also have a free report on my website. So if anyone wants to download that, that's there for you. It's totally free. And part of my thought behind that is that as much as I would love to change the world, it's definitely like, no, habit or not, I'm one of those people that really would love to change things. You can't do it all yourself, but what you can do is you can put the information out there,
Yeah.
and hopefully, you never know, that might be useful for other organisations or activity providers, and it just helps us all base decisions on that data and hopefully cause change in a wider sense. That was a bit of a rambly answer.
No, it's good, and it's really good to hear. Like, it's really useful to hear about the report freely available, because I think like I think lockdown as well has put a bit of a focus on ways that you can improve your well-being or notice an impact on like your mental health or physical health or whatever, with things that are outside, because even if you're maybe not able to do it in a big group like you might have previously, or your whole community together, it's all we've had access to on the days where the weather's been all right. It's like all we've got access to right now is outdoor space. So I think it's really interesting, and it kind of, for me, it's like I've noticed that a lot more people are kind of getting out and trying things outdoors because it's all we've got, and actually that's just going to stick because that's going to connect with some people.
Definitely, for so many people, experience that benefit that the outdoor brings. So hopefully, instead of having to read about it or being told, oh, it's good for you, everyone's gone out and been able to feel that mental benefit, which is fantastic.
Yeah. And you said that you swim. Do you swim outdoors?
I think swim is a big word. I dip. I dip. I get in and I splash around. I kind of have no interest in lengths or distance. I just like a good view and cold water.
Yeah. And I noticed recently you'd posted about that you'd gone out for a run. This makes me sound like I've been like just watching things, but it's like you posted about the kind of benefits for you of like getting out and moving again.
Oh, definitely. Like, I love my work. Definitely putting off just you think one more of this, one more of that, and then before you know it, it's like it's like the end of the day. So I think purposefully creating space for that actually does make me more productive.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just need to kind of prod myself to get out there. you know, especially when you're tired. We're all told the outdoors, you know, the outdoors does make you feel better, but there are definitely days that it's hard work to get yourself over the threshold. Um, and I think, I can't remember who said it, but just put your kit on. Just, you know,
Yeah.
put your trainers on. Like, just, if you don't fancy it when you're like 10 minutes down the road, that's fine. You can come back, but just get out, like, do that first bit. And I find, I wish I remember who said that, but it's really helpful. Like, even if I put on my running stuff, start running and think, oh, it's not today. At least I've tried the first bit. You're very rarely turned around.
Yeah. That's a very that's a transferable thing, I think, for a lot of different sports or activities. I think that definitely that action of going and getting whatever you're doing, but getting into your kit and even just leaving the front door. It's the same as even just people that are maybe doing home workouts or something like that, or a cycle. It's like if you go and get your stuff ready, you're much more likely to kind of go for it and benefit from it than
Definitely.
if you put it off. So what's next in all of the different things that you're involved in?
Well, so what's next is hopefully it's such a tricky question. On a personal note, I'm hoping that that restrictions can lift a little bit and we can look to return to putting on some of the events like such as Women's Trad Festival. So it's not a fully certain answer yet, but I'm very much hoping that things keep going in the right direction. Which is a very vague answer, but we haven't quite got the certainty just yet.
Yeah, I think that's unfortunately the way everyone's going to have to answer right now.
Yeah.
What about with your research? Is there anything you're currently looking at or planning on looking at in more detail?
Yeah, definitely. So we've just closed the wear and care survey with Grangers, which looks at the how we look after and care for our clothing and equipment. So I'm currently looking at that at the minute, and that I'm really enjoying. I'm a proper geek. I love data analysis, so it's a really fun patch at the minute. I'm looking at all the different trends. So I think keep an eye on their channels for when that's out and about, but that should be really interesting.
Yeah. And for keeping up to date with what you're up to, what's happening with Women's Trad Festival, what's happening with Women in Adventure, all the many things that you're involved in, what's the best way for people to kind of keep up to date and see all the developments?
So to stay in touch with me, just give me a follow on Instagram. And for Women's Trad Festival, you can find us on Instagram there, or you can subscribe to our newsletter on womenstradfestival.co.uk. And then for all things Women in Adventure, you can join the network, which is womeninadventure.com.
That's awesome.
That's most of it.
That's great. And what I'll do in the description of this as well, I'll make sure all that stuff's in there so people can go to the website and kind of follow you and follow everything that's going on. So basically, is there kind of anything that's like a big takeaway from all the work that you're involved in that you feel like has been the most impactful thing? It's a massive thing to ask someone.
That's a big question to end. I think maybe it stems back to what we were talking about earlier. Like, if you feel passionate about something and you really want to give it a go, whether it's a business idea, whether it's an event, whether it's, you know, running challenge, whether it's on your bike, take those first steps and tell someone. Because once you've committed in some way, whether it's you know, on paper, to a friend, then it's far more likely to happen. So I think, yeah, take the first steps and have confidence, because if you're really passionate about something, then you find a way to make it happen. So
Yeah.
give it a go.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for speaking to us. I feel like there are so many things that I was just like, I want to ask all of it, but I don't want to overwhelm you. So it's just really interesting. And I think anyone that's looking to find out more about both Women in Adventure and the Women's Trad Festival, I follow you kind of online and stuff, and so I would encourage people to do that and keep keep up with us. But
Thank you
yeah,
so much.
it's been so great. Thank
Yeah, it's been
you.
really nice to chat, and have a great weekend.
You too. Bye.